Alright guys, so for this tutorial I will show you guys how to do a Z-remesher on your pumpkin and reproject the detail from the high poly sculpt back onto that Z-remesh pumpkin. Okay? So I already loaded up my pumpkin sculpt and for me it looks something like this. And let's in order to before we Z-remesh our pumpkin, let's make a copy of it. And to do that, let's make sure your pumpkin is selected in your subtool menu here and click on duplicate, and that'll make a copy of your pumpkin. And you see here that says pumpkin 1. That's your pumpkin copy. And let's rename it from pumpkin 1 to, let's say, pumpkin underscore remesh. Enter. Now, that is our new pumpkin remesh. And you can turn on solo mode, so that's the only thing you're looking at, because otherwise you might see a bunch of other stuff like so. So let's just turn on solo mode, and that's the one thing you're working with. So in order to Z-remesh, I can click on this Z-remesh button right here, and this is a custom menu button. If you don't have this, the Z-remesh menu is accessible under Geometry, Z-remesher, and click on Z-remesh here. And you'll see that ZBrush will do its thing, and we'll wait for this bar to load. And once it's finished loading, you should have something like this. And yeah, so if you hit the Shift F key, you can see the new polygon in your Z-remesh pumpkin. Okay? All right, so now after we're done Z-remeshing our pumpkin, then the next step we have to do is to subdivide it and reproject the details back on. And to do that, I'm just going to go under the geometry menu here and click on divide a couple times. So I'm going to do it, let's do it 3 times. So I'm at 239,000 active points. This number might vary depending for each one of you, depending on what kind of sculpt you are making. So let's do it 3 times, and let's go to reproject our pumpkin details back on. So I'm going to hit Shift F again to turn off poly frame mode. And before we project our details back on here, make sure that the only things that are visible is the pumpkin, that the remesh pumpkin that you just did the Z-remesher on, and the high-res pumpkin that we're going to project the details from. Okay? So in the subtool menu here, make sure that the eye icon is turned off for every other subtool except for the pumpkin that we are projecting on and the pumpkin that we're projecting from. So only these two should be visible. Now, with your pumpkin remesh subtool selected and make sure the visibility is on, I'm going to click project all, and it will ask me if I want to project the sculpt detail as well as the poly painting detail. I'll hit yes, and I will let ZBrush do its thing. That was super fast. You see here that we're slowly getting our details back on there, but it's a little like something's going on here, and that's just because there's some shapes that are mismatching, so we can fix that. But before we fix it, let's subdivide our pumpkin once more time. And so we all know that we can subdivide by going through the geometry and hit tab here and click on divide. The shortcut for that is Control D. So you can hit Control D, and that will also subdivide your sculpt. So once we have subdivided, I will get, I'm at 957,000 right now. And kind of the rule of thumb is you kind of want to match closely the active points of the mesh that you're projecting from to the mesh that you're projecting on. So 957,000 is close enough to 1.2 million. So that's okay. I'll leave it there, and that will be the last time I subdivide for my pumpkin. You might have to subdivide more, depends on what you're working with. All right, so in order to fix these kind of white areas, what I will do is I will, under their distance tab here, by default it should be set at 0.02. I'm just going to crank it all the way up to 1. And then I will hit project all again. And it'll run and do its thing. And once ZBrush is done running, you will see that we have a lot our details reprojected back on our pumpkin. Okay, and this works. This is it did a pretty good job of reprojecting. I'm seeing a little bit of problems. For example, this area here is a little bit funky, so I'm just going to go in and hold down Shift, which is the activate the smooth brush, and I'm going to turn off RGB and only smoothing out the sculpting details here. And I'm just going to smooth some of these areas out just a bit so that we're good to go. Yep, something like that. That looks okay for our purpose. And actually, let me smooth this area out too. So once you're done reprojecting the details back on, make sure you go in and check for any like kind of funky little areas like that. So once you're done, that is your Zremesh and reprojected pumpkin. So in the next tutorial, I will show you how to create a UV map in ZBrush and exporting out a texture for our pumpkin. All right, see you next tutorial.